What are the differences between immigration policy between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris? Immigration has become one of the top hot-button issues during this election. So today, we are going to take a look at what immigrants can come to expect from each of these candidates should one of them become elected. To make this easy to understand, I have broken this down into different categories. And we are going to start where the two candidates have their greatest overlap in policies, the border. While they have different approaches, they are both essentially pushing for billions of dollars to be invested into tougher border security. Let's start with Vice President Harris. The Vice President worked together with President Biden to try to pass a bipartisan bill earlier this year that was designed to reduce the number of undocumented immigrants coming into the U.S., expedite the asylum process, and give the government the authority to shut down the border when too many migrants cross it. The only reason that this bill did not pass is because President Trump told Republicans to not vote for it so that it could be easier for him to campaign on this issue during the election season. Now that Vice President Harris has become the nominee, she has made this border security bill a centerpiece of her policy and promises to enact it into law if she is elected president. Some of the highlights include almost $8 billion to ICE to help them increase their capacity for their existing detention centers, nearly $7 billion to CBP to hire more Border Patrol agents, around $4 billion to USCIS to hire new officers, granting DHS the power to shut down the border if crossings average more than 4,000 per day for at least 1 week, and to continue building Trump's border wall with the money that is already earmarked for it. Trump's approach, on the other hand, is to essentially stop cross-border migration altogether. Not only does he want to completely finish building his border wall, but he also wants to move thousands of U.S. troops to the border in order to prevent as many people as possible from entering. In addition, he wants to deploy the Navy as a fentanyl blockade on the water, using the drug as a pretense to board and inspect any ship at any time. He also intends to construct massive immigrant detention camps along the border to detain anyone caught crossing, where they would sit and wait for their deportation flight. When the Republican National Committee released their policies, it also said that a second Trump administration would also bring back the travel ban. According to their own words, the goal would be to prevent anyone from entering the country who is considered to be a jihadist sympathizer, aka Muslim, a communist, a Marxist, or a socialist. Next is the topic of asylum, which both candidates are looking to crack down upon. The bipartisan border bill that Vice President Harris promised to pass would empower asylum officers to deport asylum seekers, completely bypassing immigration court. It would also end the practice of catch and release, keeping asylum seekers under federal supervision for up to 90 days while they complete their asylum interviews. Those who would pass would get work permits, and those who would fail would be removed from the U.S. In addition, the bill would make it more difficult to pass the credible fear standard during asylum claims, meaning far fewer immigrants would be granted asylum. However, while this is a right-wing chance to change policy, Vice President Harris has made it clear that she does not support the Remain in Mexico policy and that she will not tolerate children being separated from their parents by the government at the border. Contrary to Vice President Harris, President Trump has every intention to reinstate the Remain in Mexico bill. He also wants to reinstate a zero-tolerance policy that requires a criminal prosecution for those who enter the country unlawfully. The last time his administration did this, it resulted in thousands of children being separated from their parents. And as if that were not cruel enough, the RNC's recent policy announcement also has said that Trump will return all trafficked children to their home countries despite their parents being detained in the U.S. In addition, during his time in office, Trump's administration has proposed rules to significantly restrict asylum, making it much more difficult for asylum seekers to pass their screenings. As a result, only 4% of asylum seekers who were forced to remain in Mexico ended up having their asylum claims approved during the Trump presidency. Next, let's take a look at policy differences between the two when it comes to undocumented immigrants. This is where former Vice President Harris and Trump start to have a significant difference. Harris has publicly said that she supports an earned pathway to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants, although nowhere in her bill is any any sort of amnesty for the 11 million undocumented individuals currently living in the country exist. The only exception is a pathway to citizenship for Afghan allies and their families who were admitted or paroled into the U.S. after July 2021. However, the Biden-Harris administration did recently issue an executive order to use parole in place and to allow approximately 500,000 undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens to obtain legal status without leaving the country. So there are signs that she might follow through on her promise to offer an earned pathway to citizenship, although it probably would not be a priority until her border bill is passed. Trump, on the other hand, has made deporting the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the country one of his biggest priorities during his second term. He has vowed to begin the largest deportation program in American history by significantly expanding the powers of ICE to find and deport people. That includes carrying out workplace raids and arresting undocumented immigrants in public places. He also wants to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, so his administration has the power to remove anyone they want from the U.S. without due process. And that's not all. Trump would try to bring an end to sanctuary cities withholding federal funds to force cities to turn over their undocumented population. And he also wants to end birthright citizenship for the children of immigrants who came into the U.S. illegally. That means ordering agencies to stop issuing Social Security cards and U.S. passports to kids with undocumented parents, despite the fact that they were born here. There's even the possibility he would go further and deny birthright citizenship to all children of non-citizens, including those of green card holders. Okay, next, let's take a look at the candidates' positions on DACA. Vice President Harris has supported Dreamers for years and has fought to defend and protect DACA during her time as the Attorney General of California. More recently, she publicly promoted the Biden administration's expansion of healthcare to DACA recipients and supports making it easier for Dreamers to become eligible for work visas. In 2019, she campaigned on a platform to help Dreamers get legal status and put them on a pathway to citizenship. Former President Trump, on the other hand, attempted to end the DACA program during his first term in office and will try to do the same if he gets a second. When Congress introduced bipartisan legislation to provide Dreamers with a path to legal status during his first presidency, Trump publicly opposed it. And perhaps more alarming, he did not carve out exceptions for Dreamers when he announced his mass deportation program, implying that he intends to remove them along with everyone else who is undocumented if he gets the chance. Trump and Harris have a similar divide when it comes to humanitarian programs. Since 2022, the Biden administration has set a refugee ceiling of 125,000 refugees, which is more than 8 times that of Trump's presidency. They have also created humanitarian parole programs for people fleeing Afghanistan, Ukraine, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And just earlier this year, they extended temporary protected status for the Haitians that was baselessly attacked by Donald Trump on the debate stage. For those of you who missed it, former President Trump claimed that the Haitian migrants were eating the cats and dogs of the citizens of Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
It's a claim that has since been debunked, but that has not stopped right-wing media from continuing to spread the lie. And if elected to a second term, former President Trump would suspend the U.S. refugee resettlement program, revoking protections from those allowed to stay in the U.S. for humanitarian reasons. That includes Afghans who were our allies during the Afghanistan war. And it's also likely that most, if not all, people with TPS would lose their status. After my last video about Trump's immigration policies, I got a lot of messages from people insisting that he would not restrict legal migration. Well, I am sorry to upset you, but that is exactly what he has done in the past. But before we take a look at what a second Trump presidency would look like for legal immigrants, let's take a look at the vice president's policies. The Biden administration has worked hard to reverse a lot of the restrictions on legal immigration that were put there during the first Trump presidency. And if elected, Kamala Harris would likely continue that trend, restoring the legal immigration system to the way it was before he took office. In addition, she would continue continue to eliminate employment-based visa backlogs, recapture unused visas, and work to reduce the long wait times that everyone is experiencing. We haven't yet heard her say anything about removing per-country visa caps, but there's speculation that she might support it. However, more likely than not, a Harris administration would simply maintain the current legal immigration system, making incremental improvements rather than sweeping changes. Trump, on the other hand, would not maintain the status quo. During his first presidency, the administration passed more than 400 executive orders targeting the immigration system, leading to legal immigration to being cut almost in half between 2016 and 2021. And he's made it clear that if he gets a second term, he would transition to a merit-based immigration system, which means only accepting those who his administration deems worthy. Specifically, he wants to prevent people from becoming a drain on public resources, which likely means a new public charge rule that will prevent many lower-income immigrants from legally being able to immigrate to this country. His formal policy also states that he wants to put an end to chain migration, which is another way of saying he wants to limit family immigration. That might mean limiting how many family-based green cards are issued each year, or reducing the number of relatives you can sponsor, or both. Either way, there is no doubt that Trump intends to put the legal immigration system in harm's way if he gets the chance. At this point, it should be obvious what to expect from each of the candidates when it comes to immigration. Vice President Harris has claimed that she's going to fix our broken immigration system, but the bill she's proposing is basically a Republican wish list of border security measures. The only part of the legislation that would actually help people legally immigrate to the U.S. relates to an increase in annual visa numbers. Specifically, there would be an additional 32,000 visas available for family-based immigration, an additional 158,000 visas for employment, and an additional 32,000 visas for various other visa types, all of which would be allocated over 4 years from 2025 until 2029. And that's it. Unless she plans on unveiling some new sort of earned pathway to citizenship, the only immigration reform that she seems interested in right now is border security. Then there's President Trump, who obviously wants massive immigration reform, but not in any way that would benefit immigrants. Like we discussed, he wants to shut down the border, deport millions of undocumented individuals, significantly restrict legal immigration, and end all humanitarian programs. If he were able to implement all of these reforms, the damage to this country's future would likely be immeasurable and potentially something we could never recover from. If you want to learn more about the Trump immigration policies, I'll include a link to my other video breaking down the 2024 Republican platform that was recently released. In it, I cover every single immigration policy that they hope to pass and explain what each actually means for immigrants in this country. I'll include a link to this video here. So click here to watch this video and I'll see you there.